Serializable and Snapshot. Introduction. The Serializable and Snapshot module provides you with the instructions and devices to develop your hands-on skills in the following topics. First, working with serializable isolation level, and the second is working with snapshot isolation level. Exam objectives. Two objectives are covered in this lab. Demonstrate how the isolation level serializable impacts concurrency. When a select statement and an insert statement are executed by two simultaneous sessions on table without index. When a select statement and an insert statement are executed by two simultaneous sessions on an index column, and demonstrate how the isolation level snapshot recognizes only the modifications that were made before the beginning of the transaction. Next, exercise 1, working with serializable isolation. The system of locking that works between transact SQL transaction in the database is controlled or determined by isolation level. There are various isolation levels in SQL Server apart from serializable and snapshot. In the other levels are as follows. Read and committed. This is the lowest isolation level. In this level, you can modify the data when the transaction is running. Repeatable read. This is similar to read committed level. However, if you execute two select statements in a single transaction, the result will be the same of both the statement. Read committed. This is the default isolation level in SQL Server. The select statement returns only committed data from the database. In this exercise, you will work with serializable isolation level. This level is an extension of repeatable read. The database engine will wait till all the transactions are completed, and then only an update or insert transaction will execute on the data. Task 1. Execute select and insert statement in two simultaneous sessions on the table without an index. In this task, you will perform the following actions. Create a new table named dim product-team without primary key, thereby the table will not have any index. Fill the table with records. Display all the records from dim product-team table. Create session 1 transaction query with multiple select statement, and create session 2 transaction query with an answer statement. Step 1. Ensure you have powered on the required devices and connect to PLAB SQL01. Step 2. From the PLAB SQL01 desktop, click Start and click Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. The Connect to Server dialog box appears. From the Server Type drop-down list, click Database Engine. In the Server Name text box, type PLAB SQL01 and click Connect. Step 3. The SQL Server Management Studio window opens. In the Object Explorer, click to expand the Databases folder. Step 4. To select the database from the list of databases, click AdventureWorks TW 2016 CTP3. To create a new query from the Query ribbon, click New Query. Step 5. The New Query pane opens. Step 6. To create a new table, type the following query in the New Query pane. This query checks if the table named dim product-team exists in the database or not. If it exists, the table is deleted and a new table with the same name is created. The new table will have two columns, namely product key and list price. There is no index created on dim product-team table. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query runs successfully and the result set is displayed. Step 7. To create a new query from the Query ribbon, click New Query. Type the following query in the New Query pane. This query imports record into the dim product-team table from the dim product table based on the where clause. A new record is also inserted in the dim product-team table. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query runs successfully and the results is displayed. Step 8. To create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. Type the following query in the New Query pane. This query displays all the records from the dim product-team table in the ascending order of the product key column. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query runs successfully and the result set is displayed. Step 9. To create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. Type the following query in the New Query pane. Recall the dim product-team table does not have any index. Consider this query as session 1. In this query, the transaction isolation level is set to serializable. There are two select statements that are executed in the transaction with a delay of 15 seconds between each execution. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query runs successfully and the result sheet is displayed. Notice the result pane shows an empty result. Step 10. After a delay of 15 seconds, the entire transaction is executed. The result pane shows the execution of both the select statements. Step 11. To create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. Type the following query in the New Query pane. Consider the query as session 2. The transaction isolation level is set to serializable. The query inserts a record into the dim product-team table. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query runs successfully and the result set is displayed. Task 2. Execute, select, and insert statement in two simultaneous sessions on the table with index. In this task, you will perform the following actions. Create a new table named dim product-team with primary key. Thereby, the table will have an index. Fill the table with records. Display all the records from the dim product-team table. Create session 1 transaction query with multiple select statement, and create session 2 transaction query with an insert statement. Step 1. To create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. Type the following query in the New Query pane. This query checks if the table named dim product-team exists in the database or not. If it exists, the table is deleted, and a new table with the same name is created. The new table will have two columns, namely product key and list price. The product key column is set as the primary key. Therefore, an index is automatically created on dim product-team table. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query runs successfully and the result set is displayed. Step 2. To create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. Type the following query in the New Query pane. This query inserts record into dim product-team table from dim product table based on the where clause. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query runs successfully and the result set is displayed. Step 3. To create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. Type the following query in the New Query pane. This query inserts a record into the dim product-team table. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query runs successfully and the result set is displayed. Step 4. To create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. Type the following query in the New Query pane. This query displays all the records from the product-team table in the ascending order of the product key column. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query runs successfully and the result set is displayed. Step 5. To create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. Type the following query in the New Query pane. Recall the dim product-team table has an index. Consider the transaction as session 1. In this query, the transaction isolation level is set to serializable. There are two select statements that are executed in the query with a delay of 15 seconds between each execution. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query runs successfully and the result set is displayed. After a delay of 15 seconds, the entire transaction is executed. The results pane shows the execution of both the select statements. Step 6. To create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. Type the following query in the New Query pane. Consider the transaction as session 2. This query inserts a record in the dim product-team table. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query runs successfully and the result set is displayed. Exercise 2. Working with snapshot isolation level. In the snapshot isolation level, other queries can interact with the snapshot-based transactions. However, if the other queries are modifying the data, the old version of the data is stored in the team DB database. Thus, the data gets modified in the database when the snapshot transactions are running, but the changes of the data are stored in the SQL Server resources. In this exercise, you will work with snapshot isolation level. Task 1. Implement snapshot isolation level in SQL transaction. In this task, you will perform the following actions. Enable the database to work with snapshot isolation level. Check whether the product-team table exists. If it exists, delete it and create it again. Fill the records in the product-team table from the dim product table based on where clause. Create session 1 transaction to update the records in the product-team table. The transaction is not committed. Create session 2 transaction to display the records of the product-team table. The transaction is not committed. Commit session 2 1 transaction. Commit session 1 transaction and commit session 2 transaction. Step 1 to create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. Type the following query in the New Query pane. This query enables the AdventureWorks DW2016 CTP3 database to work with snapshot isolation level. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query runs successfully and the result set is displayed. Step 2 to create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. Type the following query in the New Query pane. This query checks if the product-team table exists in the database. If it exists, the query deletes it and creates it again with two columns, namely product key and list price. The data for the product-team table is imported from the dim product table based on the where clause. The query also records display all the records from dim product-team table. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query runs successfully and the result set is displayed. Step 3. To create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. Type the following query in the New Query pane. In the query, the transaction isolation level is set to snapshot. Consider this transaction as session 1. The update statement the update statement updates the list price column value and the product team table. Note an important point: the transaction is not committed in session 1. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query runs successfully and the result set is displayed. Step 4. To create a new query from the query ribbon, click New Query. Type the following query in the New Query pane. In the query, the transaction isolation level is set to snapshot. Consider this transaction as session 2. The select statement displays all the records from the product-team table. Notice the list price column still shows the old values. It is not showing the updated value of 212 because the update statement in session 1 transaction was not committed. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query runs successfully and the result set is displayed. Step 5. Open the query of session 1 transaction where the update statement is written. Comment the entire query and type only commit at the end of the query as indicated. In the query, the update statement is committed and the list price column values will be updated to 212. However, you must commit the second session transaction and then only the list price column values will reflect the update. If you will check the list price column values without committing the session 2 transaction, you will find the old list price values only. To run the query, click Execute or press F5. The query ran successfully and the result is displayed. Step 6. Open the query window of session 2 transaction where the select statement is written. Comment the statement and add commit in the query as indicated. In this query, the commit statement will completely reflect the new value of 212, the list price column. Thus, you must commit both the session transaction to reflect the changes in the table. To run the query, click execute or press F5. The query ran successfully and the results is displayed. The list price column shows the updated value of 212 for all the records. Close all active windows. Summary. You covered the following activities in this module: working with serializable isolation level and working with snapshot isolation level.